The last couple of weeks, I haven't forgotten Amy up there. She's doing just what she's supposed to do. I'm just, she gets antsy. The last couple of weeks, last week, we started our look at Job. And if you will remember, Job was one of three people that the Bible declares blameless and righteous. Jesus, Job, and Noah. All right. And we got into the first two meetings, the two meetings that God had with the heavenly court. And in that heavenly court was Satan. Now you remember, this is the New Testament Satan that we know. This is the Satan of Mideastern legend, mythology, and lore. And God said to Satan, "What are you doing here?" And Satan said, "Well, I've been down on earth." And God said, "What were you doing?" And he said, "I was walking around, walking to and fro." And God said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And Satan said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I have. And I want to tell you something. All of that righteousness that Job has, all of that goodness, everything about him that is so perfect, I could break it in the snap of the fingers." And God said, "I bet you can." And Job said, "I bet I can." And God said, "All right, knock yourself out. You can do anything you want, just don't take his health." Now, because Job was a good man, and because Job had lived up to the tenets of God's teaching, Job had been blessed. A lot of money, a lot of livestock, a lot of kids. I suppose that's a blessing. And anyway, he had money, livestock, kids. He was well thought of. And in the course of everything that went on, Satan managed to get it all away from him. And Job was pretty much devastated. But in the last verse of chapter 1, hear the word of the Lord and the narrator in this story. In all of this, well, let's go back one. Let's go back a couple of verses. "Then Job arose," this is after his kids had been taken from him, "tore his robe, shaved his head, fell on the ground, and he said, 'Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.' And in all of this, Job did not sin or charge God with wrongdoing." Do you hear some of David's, the psalmist's, despair in Job? So Job goes back to another meeting in heaven with God. And there are these other heavenly beings, and God says, "Where you been, Job?" Job says, not Job, to Satan. He says, "Where you been, Satan?" He says, "I've been down on earth, walking around, to and fro. Did you consider my servant Job, who is upright and blameless?" And Satan said, "Oh yeah, I just didn't hit him with enough. I can break him down. Everybody has their breaking point, and I can break him down. And what we need to do is mess with his health and mess with all of that, because every man's desire is to save their own skin." The term that Job used, you remember what it was? George, what was it? Skin for skin. I'll give skin to save my skin. That was the term that Satan used. And God said, "Okay, have at it." One thing you can't do, you can't take his life. Anything else is fair game. So Satan went and he poured down all of these calamities on Job. The final one being his body being absolutely covered with sores, being miserable, being sick, and we kind of left Job sitting in his ashes, scraping his sores, and naturally his wife nagging. I mean, this is just the way it goes. And in verse 9 of chapter 2, it says, "Then his wife said to him, 'Do you still persist in your integrity? Curse God and die.'" Well, what she meant was, curse God, and you'll die, and you will be out of your misery. But he said to her, you speak as any foolish one would speak. Shall we receive the good at the hand of God and not receive the bad? And in all this, Job did not sin with his lips. So we jump about 20 chapters to today's scripture, which we find in Job chapter 22 and chapter 23. And I asked Amy if she would pick up and read just a little bit. And as she reads, I hope you will listen to the changing ebb and flow of Job's arguments, Job's moods, how Job is dealing in his dialogue with God.
Then Job answered and said, even today is my complaint bitter. My stroke is heavier than my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his seat. I would order my cause before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would know the words which he would answer me, and understand what he would say unto me. Will he plead against me with his great power? No, but he would put strength in me. There the righteous might dispute with him, so should I be delivered forever from my judge. Behold, I go forward, but he is not there, and backward, but I cannot perceive him. On the left hand where he doth work, but I cannot behold him. He hideth himself on the right hand, that I cannot see him. For God maketh my heart soft, and the Almighty troubleth me. Because I was not cut off before the darkness, neither hath he covered the darkness from my face.
Job's in a world of hurt. I want you to think about folks that you've been familiar with forever. Curly Larry and Mo, Cooper Fran and Tom. How many of y'all remember Cooper Fran and Ollie? Yeah, there's some here old enough for that. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, down there in that furnace. Well, while Job is sitting there in the ashes, and he's scraping his sores and tearing his clothes and just miserable as all get out, here come three of his friends. Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar. And we're probably never going to be as familiar with them as we are with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I never can remember the three wise men. I know Melchior and Belteshazzar, but I never can remember the third one's name. Can anybody help me with that?
It's not in the Bible.
It's not in the Bible? Okay, that makes me feel better then. The third one's name was Tom. Melchior, Balthazar, and Tom. That's it. All this comes in threes. Well, in chapter 3, I want you to see where we are is the friends have come to console Job. They were his good friends. And if you have any Jewish friends, you know that one of their customs is when somebody passes away in the Jewish community, folks go and sit with that person for 7 days in mourning, in grieving. It's called sitting Shiva. And I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday that is Jewish to make sure I got all my facts right. And I said, well, the three friends in Job didn't say a word for 7 days. And he said, laughingly, because his wife was right by, that's because they were men. But anyway, it was so that they can all sit and be in common thought. Well, after the 7 days was over, they began to have these cycles, and there are 3 cycles of conversation between the 3 friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, and Job. And they start out very, very mild, and the 3 friends comfort Job, just like sometimes our friends comfort us, and thank the Lord for friends that are there with an arm that goes around. What would we do without our friend's arm that goes around us, that says, it's going to be all right, and I'm here with you, and I'm here for you? Started out that way. But as the first 2 cycles continued, it began to get a little bit more contentious. And the friends began to pick at Job. And in the first cycle, they were just a little bit picky. And Job, to quote the way they put it in the scriptures, maintained his integrity. But when we got into the second cycle, they really got down to brass tacks. And Job never sinned, but he came real close. And he cursed the day that he died because he was born, because he was so miserable in life. And particularly Eliphaz. Eliphaz is a jerk. That's the only way I know to put it, is Eliphaz is a jerk. And he kept picking at Job and picking at Job. And Job kind of lost his cool with Eliphaz, and he kind of lost his cool with Bildad. But he maintained his integrity. And that's where we pick it up today in chapter 3. Now, Amy read out of the King James Version. Okay, I'm going to read a couple of verses out of the New RSV. I think that's what I'm in. Yeah, the New RSV. That maybe brings a little bit more up-to-date language. And Amy, it starts out there in chapter 23. Then Job answered, "Today is my complaint. My complaint is bitter." Bitter can be translated in two other words, which most of the commentaries seem to think better fit: defiant or rebellious. Because Job is very peeved and put out with God's idea of righteousness and wants to know why the good people sometimes have bad things happen to them. Rabbi Kushner's book, right? Theodicy, that's the term. And why sometimes bad people have all of this good stuff happen to them. And Job just couldn't understand that, just like I think I know I have trouble understanding it. I've been a pretty good guy. How come this happens to me? You're a pretty good girl. How come this happens to me? Thank God for His grace, because I haven't been so good, but look at what I've got. He's blessed me. And Job just doesn't understand how God is working. And he gets rebellious, and he gets defiant, and he just gets really angry about what he sees as the injustice of God. Now, to be honest with you, I've been going to church for about 65 years, 64. I haven't heard very many messages on the injustice of God. It's just not something that you think about. And there is no injustice in God. But Job has all of this bubbling up in him. And his mood swings are just absolutely phenomenal. Let me go ahead some more there in the book. Today also my complaint is bitter. His hand is heavy despite my groaning. His, in some translations, translates my hand. My hand is heavy in my groaning, meaning that the disease that has spread all over his body is now beginning to eat his limbs, and his hand is heavy because of the disease that has been inflicted upon him. He's sad. He's doleful. He's down. And all of a sudden, we have this shift in mood. And he says, "Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his seat." All of a sudden, do you hear the confidence Job has? That he wants to find God. He wants to find him. I want to come to his seat, and I want to sit down and talk to him. And for the next 4 or 5 verses, he couches it in legalese, in legal terms. And I wish to goodness sometimes that we had Pew Bibles, because this is where it helps to follow along in the Bible. listen, we've got to shift and move. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his seat. I would lay my case before him.